Joey, we had to scrap the episode that we were going to do. And
it got real.
It got real because, and also this is something that is this is his favorite subject.
Where I live.
And I've been making a promise that we're going to do a whole episode about Egyptian pyramids. And lo and behold, in the last week, we got some major news about the pyramids and what's under the pyramids of Giza.
And it's kind of not new, you know? If you recall, years ago, there were some thermal imaging anomalies that scientists were taking pictures of at the Pyramid of Giza, and it was showing that there's just this like energy or warmth in the center of the pyramids. And so a lot of people took it as like, oh, this is kind of like proof that, you know, the pyramids are not what we think they are. They're not tombs. They weren't built as tombs. They were never built as tombs, etc. And there's more of a purpose to them, whether they be like something to help agriculture or maybe like a power plant of some sort for some ancient kind of like technology that we know nothing about, etc. And there's a lot of proof leading up to this new news, right? So like we got to backtrack a little bit. It says, and this was recently too. We did an episode and I talked about this, that China had caught strange atmospheric phenomenon on their Lidar.
Like about a month or two ago.
Like plasma bubbles that are above the pyramids that you can only see with the Lidar. And they just thought that it's just a very strange anomaly and no one understands why those plasma bubbles are there, etc. And then lo and behold, there's this new type of Lidar. It's a fucking mouthful. I'm not even going to try to say it. But anyway, it's a Lidar, and they basically scanned the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is Khufu's pyramid. I think Khafre was... I could be fucking this up. But anyway...
I mean, we're not archaeologists.
We're not archaeologists, but listen.
By any stretch. Just paranormal podcast.
So this is the sun's pyramid, right? Khafre's son, Khufu, his pyramid, where they're saying that these pyramids were built for these guys as tombs, which is a long stretch. Like, more and more people are starting to think that the Egyptians that claim to have, you know, lived in these cities inherited these cities,
right,
and utilized these pyramids as, and they never really did utilize them as tombs, because we've till this day
never found a body
inside any of the pyramids, and we've never even found hieroglyphs in any of the pyramids. And for a culture that's very like heavily involved in
that, I didn't know,
documenting their history, they didn't write anything in the pyramids. No blueprints. It's just nothing. There's no soot inside the pyramids, so it means that even if there were people in there, what did they use to light the way so that they didn't, you know, to construct this thing, number one, and number two, to get this pharaoh all the way in there for his final resting place. What did they use to light the way, if not for fire, right? There's no evidence of any soot on the wall,
right?
But there is evidence of other stuff. Hydrogen, just a lot of different chemicals that are like oddly shouldn't be there in the pyramids. And some suggest that they use these pyramids for a technological purpose, such as power, like we would do today in the modern day. So fast forward to the recent news that just recently came out. They LiDAR scanned from space from this satellite, drawing a blank, and they determined that through this LiDAR scan that there's structures underneath the pyramids. And everyone's kind of like talking about, they're not really talking about how vast they are. I don't think, no one's like expressed how crazy the structure is that they're saying that's underneath the pyramids. They said it's 628 meters deep. And then underneath that, so it's 8 cylinders that are underneath the pyramids, like directly under them. And then underneath those cylinders are these 2 empty boxes. And these boxes are like, I forget the measurements of that they are across, but they're also in the meters high. So like 100 or 200 meters by 200 meters. It's like a perfect square. Both of them are perfect squares. And then on top of these perfect squares, you could probably like, we'll pull up the pictures and put it for everybody. On top of these perfect squares are there's 4 cylinders and 4 cylinders, right? and then these coiling spirals that go all the way up to the top of the cylinders leading into the pyramid. So how far they go deep into the earth is wild. We're talking about bigger than the Burj Khalifa. 628 meters. We're talking in feet. Like, I gotta chat GPT this.
Yeah, you keep talking. I'll chat GPT.
Chat GPT. It's got to be something like in the thousands of feet, right? These are bigger than skyscrapers that are just sitting below. Can you imagine the excavation site when they built the pyramid?
The 638 meters is 2,093 feet deep.
Bigger than the Burj Khalifa. So you're talking about skyscrapers in terms of, and what is it made out of? Granite, right? Like they use stone, so it can't be made out of anything else. They had to quarry these things, transport them, and the weight is astonishing. I asked ChatGPT to give me some kind of like rough estimate of what the weight could be if they were potentially granite or something of that nature. It was something like 900 million pounds. It's essentially an immovable object. Insane, right? And we're thinking like, how is this possible? And I hit you up. I was like, we got to change the topic because this is probably the biggest news of this century and maybe even this millennia, that we're going to discover that there was a civilization that's probably more advanced than we are today in order to build that.
Well, I watched one of the videos that you sent me. Hair in my microphone. And I'm like very hyper aware lately. I don't know what's going on. Like mushrooms. Anyways, it's crazy. I'm like, whew. But the video you sent me, it's way back in the Egyptian times. Egypt looked different. So if you go to Egypt today,
right?
You know, if we hit 10K, if that ever happens, you go to Egypt, how the pyramids look and how the surrounding area looks is entirely different than how it looked 3,000, 4,000, whatever, how many years it was. And we all know by now that the pyramids were covered in limestone and that the Nile River was actually closer to the pyramids. So there was some form of transportation via the Nile, and there was limestones. Now you have these three major structures that were built with, let's just take away what we found in the recent weeks with the Lidar. That the water, and there was horticulture. It wasn't just desert. It was some kind of plants and trees around. You play that all into a factor. However they built it with the limestone and the water and the weather, you're talking about some kind of energy that could potentially come from the pyramids. And you fast forward all these years later, obviously it's desert now. The limestone and the gold that was on it as well was robbed and deteriorated. Mainly the limestone was probably robbed and just deteriorated from the weather. But now they're just these three structures. And you take it back to like, we never found bodies. We never found hieroglyphs, which I didn't even know about that. I thought there was at least hieroglyphics in the pyramids.
No.
And now you find this subterranean structure, and there are people like Billy Carson who have been saying that these pyramids were nothing more but then some form of a generator. Billy Carson, if I remember correctly, also said that the Ark of the Covenant, there's these boxes in the pyramid. I think he said
the dimensions, the same dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant.
That are this, and are,
I don't know how true that is.
The Bible does have,
kind of sounds like, if you think of the Ark of the Covenant as a technological device, then that kind of makes sense.
Your mic is moving.
It doesn't fit a body. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. I've seen people try to lay in it, and like either the pharaohs were very, very small people, or it's something else entirely was in there.
I think that we have been led to believe a lot of lies, and this is why I sent you what I sent you about the German archaeologist. So this starts in 93, 96. Let's read this. So I'll touch real quick while Joey pulls up what I wrote him to read. But there was a German archaeologist, scientist, that was allowed to use a little rover. Here we go. I'll just read it for you. Rudolf Ganderbrink, a German engineer, an archaeologist also, who worked at a project at the Great Pyramid of Giza in the early 90s. In 1993, Rudolf used a robot named Uptupt 2 to explore the narrow shafts inside the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, Khufu's Pyramid. His robot discovered a small limestone door with 2 copper fittings at the end of one of these shafts, what some call the Ganderbrink door. After the discovery, Dr. Zahi Hawass, which Joey and I have talked about a lot.
The gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper. Are you the gatekeeper? The well-known Egyptian archaeologist and chief inspector of the antiquities of the pyramids of Giza stopped Ganderbrink and his team from continuing the exploration. There has been a lot of speculation and controversy surrounding why he halted the project, which has fueled many alternative theories about the pyramids. Now, he found... This was in the 90s. So this is something that... You find something like that, we're still intrigued by the pyramids.
They recently found a chamber above the king's chamber.
Right, where
like that empty chamber.
The king's chamber.
They haven't showed us anything from that chamber. They haven't showed us any pictures. Nothing.
So we found the chamber. There was another door that was discovered. China found some kind of energy force. This guy found something in the 90s, and Zahi Hawass put a stop to it.
Shut it down.
Because I think in his mind, and we've talked about this, in his mind, he wants to keep it that the Egyptians built the pyramids, and he doesn't want anything else.
There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of tourism behind it involved, and it's a pride for these people that, you know, our ancestors built these great pyramids. And I'm not saying they didn't, but like, I think that it's a very, very long time ago, and what you perceive to be your ancestors, like, or that the ancestors that built it may be even further back than what you know. We're not taking away from, you know, the culture or the people of Egypt about these monumental, you know, structures that obviously don't exist anywhere else in the world, or maybe they do. I mean, we know that there's pyramids in China, but nothing to this like scale. Actually, now that I come to think about it, there's one in Bosnia too that's kind of like covered in trees. So, but maybe, right? Like, but these are the most visible ones. These are the ones that we can tangibly go to and investigate. And there's no, you know, they're in plain sight. It's going to be really hard to hide findings, especially in the modern age with now Lidar technology and all these new ways of coming in, like, of all these new technologies that are coming into the field of archaeology to help us discover what we probably couldn't discover in the past. Right, and you'd have to dig things up, and there'd have to be money, and people would have to fund it and give up millions of dollars and time, and sometimes it leads to nowhere. Now it's like you don't really have to do that anymore. You just point a technological device one way, and boom, we can figure out if there's something down there and if it's worth digging up. You know.
Well, you know what's crazy is I'm surprised they were allowed to do this, unless satellites just did it voluntarily. I'm sure that
there's nothing they can do about it.
There's nothing they can do about it if it was from space. You know, sending lidar down and hitting.
No laws.
And I'll tell you this: the New York Post. I follow a couple of news outlets. I don't really like particularly to watch the news because it's just so negative, and so I try to stay away from it. But of today, as we're recording this episode, this morning I saw a post from the New York Post or Daily News that what we're talking about, but then they're saying the experts are trying to say that this is fake, and this is the reason why. Now, I didn't read the article, but every time there's some type of substantial discovery that can turn...
The plasma wasn't fake. The fact that they have thermal energy in the pyramids wasn't fake. There's also a tidbit about the pyramids that I never knew up until recently. There's something called ashlar masonry, and it's a masonry that we really can't duplicate at all today. And almost like to a degree where they maybe had a technology of melting stones to fit them in one another. Have you ever seen these small little corners? And I can send you a picture of one where it's like there's a stone and then there's another stone and they're fit together without mortar. There's no mortar. And these stones are cut perfectly, seamlessly together, and they just fit and they interlock. And then there's this little corner that kind of fits in right in between. Almost like they purposely, not almost, but they purposely cut this small little edge just to give it like a stylistic viewpoint from the outside that goes into the other stone. You wouldn't do that. Nowadays, you just make blocks that are the same dimensions and you put them together.
Right.
They didn't. They made all different types of blocks, but they all had to fit in a very specific way. So, for instance, the pyramids use that same type of masonry where each and every single block is a different size. There's not one stone that is a different size. And it's crazy because you can't make a pyramid without knowing where each and every single stone goes, number one. Number two, every stone would essentially, you would think, would have to have the same dimensions. This is like this kind of information that they kind of glaze over, and they don't want people to read into it, because when you start thinking about it, you understand the complexity of the pyramids. So now we're talking about every stone that was cut had a specific purpose and a specific location to go to. Do you understand the planning for 1 million stones, that each and every single stone has a specific place that it has to go? You can't miss by one. If you miss by one, you fuck the structure up. You know what I mean? Like, by the time if I gave you a bunch of Legos, for instance, and I said, build me a pyramid, and all the Legos were like a perfect pyramid, I would say, right? One that's like equilateral on all sides. By the time you got to the top, you'd be like, oh, it's all fucked up. I can't do it. But then if I told you, well, this one goes here, that one goes here, it's like a puzzle. It's literally putting together
like
a puzzle.
IKEA.
Like IKEA, exactly. That meme with the aliens, is like with the IKEA. And all the pieces are out. It's hilarious, but it's fucking true. It's probably the most difficult structure ever built on planet Earth. The planning alone would be insane for now, 1 point something million stones.
Now you take this into the equation, that what was there first? What's underground?
Or think about this.
Or are we confused on what was actually there, because we just thought that it was, desert and then a little bit of greenery, and then they built the pyramids. They had to have built that first, or maybe
no, that goes in first. You have to, obviously, but like it's all part of the construction of the pyramid. If it indeed is there, and people, it's not bogus. There's always going to be people that are dissenters and trying to fucking like, no, let's not talk about this because this is wild. This is like a point in history where we can't really explain how they had this technology to do something like this. So let's leave it off the table. And I'm sure there's a lot of gatekeeping in the archaeological world just because of that reason, because it's just going to set people's timeline back. Now new money has to be allocated to new stories. History books have to be rewritten, etc.
I don't think they have to be rewritten. I think they just have to be updated. You find something, an archaeological find, and you just update. Like we were updated. How many years? I always bring this up.
This is a big update though, because think about, like, you go back. They said the pyramids were built 5,000 years ago. So 5,000 years ago, people were
building electrical,
building structures that are taller than the Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they could have drilled into the ground, but they still have to have the excavation resources to do something like that.
We're not talking about drilling. We're talking about they would have to dig, because we're assuming
think about how they do that at that time. What are we digging by hand? What tools do they have to dig that deep to be able to get that far and remove that much dirt?
With this, you're already seeing they're trying to hide it, like the news, the post of the Daily News that I read today. I haven't heard anything. I've been looking about Zaire Wash, giving his opinion on it. I haven't found anything online about him, reaching out. But I'll tell you this, that one of my favorite movie franchises is Indiana Jones. That movie franchise is it's great. And excluding the Temple of Doom and the latest one that came out, which shouldn't have came out, but they take the artifacts, like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, they take the artifacts to this warehouse, right? And then you see in the Shia LaBeouf movie where we find out that that's Area 51, and all these artifacts and these weird things
are there. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
That's a good movie. I like that movie. It's underrated, honestly.
It's a little underrated. It was parts of that movie with Shia LaBeouf that were like, we could have did it without it, like the ant scene and the swinging from the trees. That was a little much, but I think there are things like that. Like the Vatican has a literal underground subterranean hall and rooms where they have these artifacts. Supposedly,
Leonardo da Vinci's books, most of which that no one will ever see, and they don't release them to the public or
there's
anybody
things
see them.
We don't know. And I think that Zaiwas and some of his confidants that are allowed full access have seen things that they don't want us to see, whether it's to preserve the Egyptian heritage and history that we know today, or the fact that it's too horrifying or too complex for us to let the truth out.
Yeah,
because it
changes the history of like Catholicism, even, to be honest. Like if we're going that far, if you say that a civilization had this crazy type of excavation power, like for instance, I work on Broadway. Obviously, it's no secret. And they're building a new theater on 45th Street. The Schubert organization is building. And I looked down the other day just to see the excavation site because they have the windows. This is a massive hole in the ground. I mean, to build this skyscraper that they're about to put up that houses a theater in it, this thing it goes deep.
Right.
Just to be able to support the structure on the that is going up. And it just makes sense that the pyramids would have this deep excavation to steady this structure to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, right? I mean, obviously it's not going to go anywhere anyway, but they could have just... Why go to the lengths of building pillars? What's the pillars for? You know what I mean? If you could just build the pyramid, like, for all intents and purposes, we were under the impression that there was nothing under the pyramids, right? That they started with...
And there was nothing inside of them.
Exactly. There's just flat base, and then they just built. And now we're finding chambers, and now we know that there's, a whole site that was excavated and this giant hole that was dug out to stick these big tubes down. If it is indeed real. I feel like this is going to be one of those things that they suppressed, and they were like, "Hey, it was a hoax." And
yeah, I just
don't buy it though.
I think too many people are on this news. There's literal pictures of it. You could see the pictures of what they found, the blips. It looks like kind of like thermal-esque, and the thermals shape into certain things.
Yeah.
And then the experts with Lidar are the ones that could be like, this is what it looks like. And then I think maybe some of the conspiracy theorists are like, this is what it is down there. It's a power generator. I even read a theory. It's a whole city down there, and Leslie and Stephen Shaw are guests that I had on the podcast a few times, and I've been on their show that's on Gnostic TV network, and they have this ongoing theory about past life that was here, going subterranean, going underground, and surviving floods and surviving.
There's a new movie. This is a new show this is reminding me of,
and surviving,
especially with the cylinders that go all the way down. It's on Apple TV. It's called Silo. Look that one up. It's just these big cylinders that go deep into the ground, and everybody's living in these cylinders.
Jeez. And that's their theory, that there's these extraterrestrials that have been here, and they kind of worked with people that were here to go down below and have life. Paraphrasing, but that's their theory. And you can go back and check out their episodes on the page, on the whatever you listen to your podcast from. But their theory is incredible, and they also have their book out that everything is in there. And she commented on what I posted for the episode, and she's like, this kind of aligns with our theory, and what we're looking at here is definitely something that's way advanced. Matter of fact, I text you and Mike had that debate. Was it last year, 2 years ago?
And I wish I knew that information about the ashlar masonry, because if I would have told Mike, well, what if I told you that every single stone had a specific place that it had to go to, and it wasn't just bringing random stones over from the quarry. It was like, this stone has a location on this side. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's too precise.
It's too precise.
And then you're going that it's aligned with stars and constellations.
Now what we're saying is the people that are cutting the stones are also planners. They have to know how to cut the stone, and then the people that are transporting need to know the location of where that stone goes.
And where are they getting these math skills at that time? I'm 38 years old, and I still can't do simple math. And these people are doing this.
I was building Legos with my daughter the other day. I'm telling you, we didn't build these fucking pyramids.
Yo, dude, I'm at work trying to build certain things, and my boss is. I'll throw a shout out to him. He goes, "Did you ever see a monkey fucking a football? Because that's what it's like to look at you, a monkey fucking a football." And I'm telling you, bro, building things and it's not easy. The tools that I'm using are updated tools, and they're not only are they dangerous, but you have to be precise. You have to take measurements, and if you're off a centimeter or a couple of inches, it fucks everything up.
Exactly.
If I'm building some type of box for my job, for something that we're using it for, and I'm off a hair, it messes everything up.
That's what I'm saying with the pyramids.
And these are structures that are how many feet high, and you know what I mean? Like this is
it's next level.
Now you take the pyramids being a wonder of the world, one of the wonders of the world.
A time period where there's no computers, there's no gasoline power, there's no electricity. Apparently, these people were indeed
So what do you
way
think?
smarter than we were.
So let me ask you this: where do you think what happens now with this news? It goes under the table, or
I think it goes under the radar and it dies off like everything else.
Yeah,
like they don't want this getting out there. Remember when Zahi Hawass found that little chamber on the top of the head of the Sphinx? There's a little video that shows them going down there, and he's like, "We are here." He's like, This is history. I can't believe I'm here." And the camera is just showing him going into it, but they never show us what's down there. And then when he was interviewed about it, he goes, "There's nothing down there. It leads to nowhere." You sure sounded excited for someone that was in a place where there was nothing when you got in there.
I'll play devil's advocate. You're excited when you're doing something new and you discover something, but if you genuinely didn't find, like I go to haunted houses, we go to places, and I'm excited when I get there. I'm like, oh, they say it's haunted. You know what I mean? And then you go into some of these places, like we went to Sleepy Hollow, right? And you were expecting some fantastical something to happen, and we ended up walking around and getting a history lesson. That was pretty cool. I was expecting to see some more or hear some more ghost stories, but we didn't. So you kind of have to have that expectation when you go somewhere, like, and if he genuinely didn't find anything, but I don't believe him because I think he's lying.
No, I think he's full of shit. And there's a few interviews with like really old people that live in Egypt, like 90, 80, and they were saying when they were kids that they remember playing in those, subterranean areas that were in the Sphinx and underneath it, and they said it goes for miles and miles, and sometimes like you didn't want to venture off too far because you wouldn't know if you'd find your way back out.
Yeah,
I gotta find that interview, but I've seen it a few times with this guy, and it's an old guy. Why is he lying? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure that at some point, if you're telling me these people are in their 90s, that they had a little bit more access to certain places.
It wasn't quarantined off by the government back then. It wasn't, you can't. There were no restricted areas. Put it that much.
Look at the catacombs in France. I mean, it's not like what we're discovering with the pyramids, but the catacombs. Now we haven't even touched the catacombs ever on this podcast, but the catacombs in France is just massive burial ground.
The next one.
Massive burial ground under there, and there's bones from people that had to be put down there because of, I think, plagues and things like that. Don't quote me. I just know about I don't know about the history.
It's an insane amount of people that are down there.
There's so many people down there buried, and they're buried.
There's also a conspiracy to that. We got to get into it.
Yeah, we'll touch on the catacombs. This is why I want Nick to come back, so he can I can touch on the. He's got he'll come a day later. He's like, I got it ready. And then he'll come in here with 3 pages, tank top on, veins popping out. Doesn't matter the weather. But the catacombs, people have gotten lost down there and have never came out because it's that big. Yeah. So I believe that these older people in Egypt are like, yeah, we used to go down there and we didn't want to stray too far away because number one, that's horrifying. That's actually one of my biggest fears. Take away the flying factor, being underground.
I'd rather die in the air than be trapped in the ground.
Yeah, I would. Well, I don't know. It's both. I don't know. We flip a coin. But I don't know.
At least you see what's going on. You know what's happening. You know what I mean?
I know if I was going to die, I'd have a way to die. But I can't say it on the podcast. I can't. But I'm just saying, both are horrifying. I mean, one is quick, one's not, I guess. And then if you run out of light, you're you're in the dark, so you're really screwed. But I don't know, man. I hope something comes of it, but I think you're about right. I think I think this is going to be thrown under the table. But it's big news, and we had to cover it. And
I'm thinking it could be that it once was like this underground city, right? That people lived in.
Yeah, I would have to go with that and that also aligns with Leslie and Stephen Shaw's theory about there being civilizations underground. Right. They even say that, to get onto the UFOs a little bit, because that's another topic you're like, UFOs and pyramids is like, you make a Joey baby.
That's it.
But they're saying that the UFOs, they're using dormant volcanoes, and every volcano has some kind of entranceway to water under, if you go deep into a volcano, apparently, according to them. Again, paraphrasing what I remember from conversations we had. And they have these ships, this technology, and that's why a lot of people are seeing UFOs from out of the water or over water. And they are using the funnels, the systems that through dormant volcanoes and cave systems and shooting out, exploring, and going back in.
I don't doubt it. I mean, if you're from millions of miles away, you got technology to do whatever the hell you want. If you can get here, the vastness of space, our closest solar system is so far away that with our conventional technology right now, it would take us generations just to even get there. People. So you'd essentially have to make a spaceship, and everyone would have to live on that spaceship for and there are people that are never going to see the eventual planet that they get to. One, and then two, you don't know if you get there and then it's not even a planet that you can inhabit.
Then you're screwed.
Then you're screwed.
Then you're screwed. And I think that's horrifying.
So if there are civilizations that can get here at will and go wherever they want in the blink of an eye, then yeah, they got technology to do whatever.
Well, you guys let us know how you enjoyed this episode. You guys can like, subscribe, leave some comments. Let us know what you think will come of this pyramid news. And you can head over to the swab_podcast page on Instagram, which will have our short reels and more updates and news in everything from conspiracies to paranormal and things like this that involve pyramids and structures around the world that we know had some type of advanced help. And of course, all made possible by Spotify for Creators. If you haven't heard about Spotify for Creators, it is the free app that allows you to get your podcast idea
out there.
If you have a phone, tablet, or computer, head over to your downloading platform to download Spotify for Creators. Joey, you look sharp all in black, man.
Listen, straight from work. We're men in black today.
Yeah, black is the color.
Yes, sir.
Black.
Check out that episode. Was it Serapeum of Sakar?
You know that's one of our top 10s now?
Is it? It's great.
I don't know.
It's a great episode, and it's insane what they actually did there.
Yeah, check out. It's audio only because we started doing videos within the last year and change. But it is a good episode where Joey and I went deep into the Seraphim of Sakar, another structures.
Serapeum or
Seraphim? Seraphim. Like the angel, Seraphim, I think. Seraphim of Sakar. We did a deep dive into that. Joey kind of led the charge. This is his forte, but that's another thing that people are like, what was that for? And how did they make them? And it'll leave you questioning. And that's one of our top 10 out of nowhere in the last 3 or 4 months. 2 episodes that were not up there.
It's getting a lot of attention now.
Yeah.
It's an enigma for sure.
It's an enigma. So are we.
Sometimes
I'm definitely an enigma. I don't even. Sometimes I just look in the mirror and I just stare at myself.
Normally, I don't even tell people I'm into this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah,
yeah. I don't know. I'm hearing from people, like, oh, you're the guy from the podcast now at work, and like, oh, like I'm in certain things, certain events. People are like, I didn't know he did that, and they're pointing to me. I'm like, yeah, you're into that stuff? Yeah, no, it's cool. So that's cool that we're getting some attention now.
Nice.
That's cool. It makes you kind of feel like you're doing the right thing.
At least we're going down the right path. Maybe.
Slow and steady wins the race.
This is true.
Slow and steady.
10,000 subscribers. Comment.
10K on Instagram. Subscribe. If we get some subscribers on YouTube, we're going to plan a trip to Egypt. I don't know how I'm getting there.
We get this guy in a fucking boat or something.
I'll do the boat. You know what? I can handle the Titanic scenario.
Oh man, that water's freezing,
dude. I'll tell you this. I before we go, I watched this video. This guy, he breaks down certain things, and he says, we saw in the movies, that it was light out, and people could see everything going on. There was the light from the Titanic. He was like, no. He was like, that area was so pitch black, even if the moon was there, that these people were literally on a sinking boat that split in half in the water
in darkness, like just pitch black,
and
that's
then
hell.
Like when the Titanic went down, those people at the boat lost power. Obviously the power went out, the lights went out, and they're trapped in there, which is horrifying, in pitch black water. So now you can't even figure out how to get out if you try, even if you wanted to try to make a miracle happen. And then when you're in the water freezing, stuck to a raft that 2 people can fit on, but because it's a girl and it's Leonardo DiCaprio, 1 person fit it on, whatever. But that water is pitch black, and it's like -5 or 0 degree water. So that makes the whole Titanic scenario like that much more horrifying.
Yeah, no, I don't want to die that way.
Yeah, we went over a lot of ways of how, and I don't think I would go any of those ways.
Is there anyone out there?
Anyone? Hello?
Can anyone hear me?
I would have told her, can you make room for me, please? Like, I'm freezing. Like,
that's the guy that played Fantastic Four? The guy that says that line? He's like Rick, the
stretchy guy?
Yeah,
Mr. Fantastic?
Yeah, Mr. Fantastic.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
he went from can anyone hear me to stretching out, as fucking Mr. Fantastic.
I guess he's got range as an actor, huh? Yeah, dad joke number 2. There we go. We got to do dad jokes every other week now. Yeah. On that note, this has been another episode of the Say What Again, Billy podcast.
Yes, sir.